You have questions? We have answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box with your host, Miss Lindsay Schiss.
Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box, where we are here to answer your mental health questions. Today, we're sitting with a raw, honest question from a listener that was just sent in. And I have with me Kathy Kinghorn. Kathy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I'm excited for this question. It already sounds interesting.
It is interesting, and I'll just jump right to it. It was sent in, and again, I think this was a really honest question, and I appreciated the authenticity from our listener. The question is this: do I need more therapy, more Lexapro, or do I just need to quit my job? Yeah. So, I appreciated this because this is obviously a person who's struggling. It's a person who's trying to figure out what's going on and why they're having a hard time in their life, right? And trying to figure out what's the solution. What do I do about this problem? What do I do about not feeling good, right? And so here's a question that I think right out of the gates is, clearly this listener feels like something's off, but it sounds like they can't name what's off, right? How do you help people when they sense something is off or wrong, but they can't quite articulate what it is?
Well, it sounds like this listener might have had people already trying to help. Maybe somebody's saying, oh, I just upped my Lexapro dose and it was great, or I just quit my job. It sounds like they may be getting lots of divergent feedback, because when we're with somebody that's confused about the path forward, boy, we just like to fix it.
Yeah.
If we're a friend, let's fix that. We can't
right.
stand confusion. That doesn't feel good. It doesn't even look good. If you're asking me as a friend, just straight to the fix it. And it sounds like this viewer is saying, I hear all that advice. I do. And I'm still confused because nobody's fix seems to land right. And I'm wondering, I'm still in this confused, wondering state. And so I think the first step is to acknowledge that confusion's tough. It's a tough feeling to sustain over time. Give yourself some grace. It's okay to be confused. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong.
But that feeling is uncomfortable,
yeah.
right? That confusion is tough. And especially when it sounds like there's some feelings, maybe some depressive feelings that are accompanying it. And no one likes to feel that way. We want to get out of that feeling. So it's to acknowledge that confusion is tough, and especially when there's sadness or depressive feelings accompanying it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And to acknowledge, like I said, that it's not just uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable for friends or colleagues. And so when their fix-it presents, it can be really lovely to just say, I'm going to share something with you. And actually, I don't need to fix it. Just please let me share. Maybe in just sharing, I can get breathe in some more calm air. And if you're the one that they've turned to, boy, the most beautiful thing you can do is listen to that request. Just listen to that request and not try to fix it. Try to hear them, try to see them, try to be with them in that moment, and try to manage your uncomfortableness with it and look at that as this is a dear friend. And so it's hard to see them in this kind of space, but I'm here with them and they must be safe with me or they wouldn't have even shared this.
Yes. It's interesting. I think sometimes I have to really be cognizant to take my therapist hat off and put my mom hat on or my friend hat on, because again, as therapists, we think, okay, we've been trained to help people and we have these tools in our tool belt. So we come kind of ready, And I think back to an experience with one of my closest friends who was going through a tough time, and she was talking about some things, and I went to fix it mode, and I was ready to help her. I had some real tools, and you know what? boy, it came across and it was very insensitive. And she just needed someone to listen. She just needed some validation and to be heard. And I immediately regretted my wanting to fix it, my wanting to help her feel better and get out of that space. And I think what you said is really important, that we often are uncomfortable with other people's discomfort. We have a hard time sitting in other people's discomfort with them. And so part of it is our own discomfort, right? And that we want to get out of that. But the reminder of, you know what, so often people just need to be listened to. And in fact, on the podcast a few weeks ago, I talked about that just asking people, do you need advice, or what would be most helpful? Would you like advice, or would you just rather have me listen? I'm happy to do either one, but really then really seeking what is needed in this moment, because sometimes advice is needed and sometimes direction is needed, but it helps you as the listener understand what's needed, and it helps the person with the problem clarify what their needs are and what maybe they would like from you. So I think that's a really helpful way to understand, okay, how can I make these next steps? So the first is acknowledge the confusion, that's tough. What do you think is next when you can't quite put your finger on it, but that they know they need to move forward? They can see like, okay, is it A, B, or C? Do I need more medication? Is it my job? Or do I need therapy? What are my choices here, right? You can see that this listener has really tried to narrow down what's going on for them, or maybe some options for them.
Yeah.
What do you suggest?
One is, in this situation, it's easy to say, trust your gut if something doesn't feel clear. But if you're dealing with depression or uncertainty, telling somebody to trust their gut can actually be a hurtful statement. It can actually be, because they may go, you don't understand. I don't know where my gut is anymore. Now, I'm not sure that's the case for this listener, but all I'm suggesting is that things can feel off and we can't quite nail it, and we think we're supposed to know, and so it may, your intuition or your gut, however you want to say it, may be giving you some idea that the path forward isn't clear yet. And you're just not getting the path forward yet. And so you may feel like I'm just gathering information right now, as a second step to gather information. Like, I don't have to make any decision. I don't have to take any action. I'm just gathering up all of this information so I have a more informed decision, a more educated decision. But the gathering is not wrong.
The gathering is so important. But the gathering is also uncomfortable because it's not a solution. We're just getting information, we're trying to understand, and we have to be, again, willing to sit in that discomfort. One thing you said I want to go back to is, how do I know if it's depression versus just unease? How do you differentiate between those two things? Because I think that's an important distinction to understand.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Lindsay. Depression makes us second guess not just the way forward, but where we've been and who we are right in this moment. Depression confuses our thoughts into believing sometimes that there's simply no way out, that we can never do whatever task is at hand. Depression overwhelms our systems, all of them. And so unease can be a really lovely jumping off point. If I'm at unease, it's really going to make me go, all right, okay, something's got to shift here. And there can actually be some excitement with that. There can be, I'm up for the challenge, or maybe I don't feel fully up for the challenge, but I'm up to trying something different. And that's not clinical depression.
Yes. So it sounds like the underlying feeling is maybe where we can go, okay, there's some excitement. Even though it's unease, there's some excitement, whereas depression is not that. It feels actually hard to make a decision, hard to think about next steps. right? There's a big difference. As you're talking, it makes me think about a situation I had just a couple of weeks ago. And my son opened his mission call, and it was an exciting thing for everybody. And the next morning, I woke up feeling so, like, unease is a good word. And actually, I just felt sad. And I really couldn't quite put my finger on it. I was actually very confused at my own response. And I wasn't sure why, because I should have been happy for all intents and purposes. And so I did what I tell my clients to do. I just started writing. And I just started, just kind of brain dumping anything that came up. And it was really interesting because I started writing one line and I just burst into tears. And it was pretty clear that that was my pain point. And to be honest, I couldn't even articulate it. I didn't know why I was feeling that unease until I started writing. And then I could feel all this emotion when I wrote this one line. And so I think that's really important, but that requires you sitting in that discomfort and actually not trying to push it away, not trying to numb out of it, to, do something to make it go away. But I had to really lean into it. And I'll be honest, it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't what I had time to do. But it's amazing how once I got clear about what was going on for me, I had so much more compassion towards myself because I was really clear, oh my gosh, I can see why there's a pain point there. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a beautiful journey. Your writing took you to a painful spot and then a beautiful spot of knowing yourself, getting to know you better. I mean, there's the beauty in that journey. The uncertainty, the unease brought you to a fuller knowledge of you.
Totally. That's exactly it. I instead of just sitting in this place of I shouldn't feel that way or I should be happy, I actually felt so much truly self-compassion. I just felt oh, this makes sense. There's no wonder. And the good news is again, is it wrong to have discomfort? No, that's right. We're okay with that. But understanding what was going on for me created so much peace within my own self. Oh, that again, now I know where my discomfort is coming from. So, that may be a tool for people. I tell people, if you're not interested in writing, voice memo, have your phone and just go on a walk and just start talking. And you know what? You don't look crazy because people think you're talking to someone in your phone, so it doesn't really matter.
That's true.
But, just getting it out there, sometimes all the things that are going on in our brain, it's helpful just to get them out and find a way to get them out there. So, so here's another question that I have about that. There is often things that are happening in our lives. So, family, work, things that are going on that maybe cloud some of our inner clarity. How can this listener know? Is it work? Is it depression? Do you need some more insight maybe that you can gain in therapy? So how do we know? Let's first go back to just how do the things in our life sometimes cloud our clarity? Maybe it's work, maybe it's our family, other, just outside forces.
Yeah. Well, based on this question, it'd be interesting to know what our viewers' history with what their story is about being wrong. Because they have three categories here that are very clear. And it seems like there's a sense of, tell me the right one. Tell me the right one. And the reality is, what if they got it wrong? I mean, Lindsay, one of the sadnesses of our job is when we hear that somebody went to a therapist that actually did harm. I guess that is a sadness of our job. And so let's say they went to a therapist and they didn't understand trauma, or they didn't understand where this person was coming from. It would be hard. And that particular therapist would have been the wrong choice for them. But it could also be empowering. I'm choosing not to make another session. I'm choosing to move forward with maybe a different path. They may, if they go the medication route, next, let's say they go, well, I'm going to try this. Maybe they go into that a little bit more informed, and they They ask the front office person, is this doctor willing to listen and understand the things I'm actually saying and experiencing? Do I have time to tell my story in their office so they get the full background? And the front office, they should know. I mean, if they're abrupt with you at the front office, you're not going to get that experience. So guessing and being wrong is not the wrong path. That's actually the right path. Keep guessing, make as good a guess as you can, and accept that if it's the wrong choice, you're just going to move forward with that information you gained.
Isn't that valuable? Like that guessing actually gives you're empowered, because if it's the wrong guess, so we move another direction, and I think with all of those things, I think, okay, you could guess on, do I need more therapy? You could go to a therapist. You could guess on, maybe I need to change my dosage of Lexapro, or maybe I need to get on Lexapro. A job's a little different, right? So if I guess on my job and I make the wrong guess, that it's a little more consequential. So, how do I get clear about a job that's not aligning with my values?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. One way to do it is to make small changes and see how they go. So let's say that the reason quitting their job is on the table is that their boss demands that tasks get done independent of, hey, it's 5:00 and it's time to go home. It's like, no, you're going to stay until it's done. And you haven't had any practice with boundary work. You need this job, so of course you're going to stay. And you start to consider, all right, how would I make a small change there? Would I have the capacity to, when I get an assignment, to say, this is going to take 3 days time. And I just want you to know that I'm going to need to leave the next 3 days at 5, and this will take 3 days time. Are you able to make that small change? And just notice, because sometimes the boss doesn't understand that you're staying late. You just assume you can't put a boundary. And so they go, well, absolutely. Absolutely. If it takes 3 days, and 3 days, Or they push back and say, I don't think you understand. You're going to stay as late for 2 days to get it done, if that's what it's going to take. Well, now you have more information. And that timing of leaving the job might not be time sensitive. It might take you a few months, but now you're gaining more information that it may not be a place that respects your boundaries, and you will ultimately have to quit it.
Yes. I think what is important there is you're taking steps. You're not just staying in this place of frustration and not doing anything, right? What does that do? It just breeds resentment and frustration. And in that place, we're not honoring ourselves. We're not standing in our integrity. But taking a step in the direction and saying, okay, well, if I set a boundary, how does that go with my boss? What does that look like, right? And getting really clear on that. And then you can know, okay, maybe this is a job that doesn't align with who I am. Maybe this is a position that I'm not cut out for, or that I'm not maybe in the right field or profession or company, whatever it is. But we have to take that initial step of courage and see what information we get. Yeah, such a good point. So, often I think when we talk about a job and changing jobs, it feels like failure often. So why is there shame around job changes and deciding that maybe this isn't the right fit for this person?
It might just be that this particular viewer doesn't understand their value. Just as a human, they may not understand that they actually have more confidence than they think they do. It might be there, and they just haven't allowed themselves to step into it and to boldly go where they need to go. But maybe they've never been mentored in that way. They may not even have a close example of somebody that's done that. And so maybe their life has been, they've been taught to be risk avoidant, take the check today. And so it's like, as they explore who they really are, they may find more confidence than they even knew existed, and that they've just never given themselves permission to jump into that confidence space.
I really think that is so important, is that it takes courage. It takes courage when, to jump into that space of, this may not be right for me, and to the willingness to have courage to trust yourself. It's really easy to go, you know what, it's fine. My pain's fine. It pays the bills and it's doing the things, whatever. But to have confidence to say, you know what, this isn't working for me. Something is off in my life, and I'm going to start taking some steps, right? I'm just going to see, and I could be wrong, right? So it's not just we're going to up and tell this listener to quit their job, but we're saying, you know what, maybe just take some steps. See what happens when you set some boundaries. See what happens when you get really clear about what's going on for you within the work environment. So really, really helpful. Kathy, is there anything else before we wrap up that you want to cover that we haven't talked about?
I guess I will just say that it sounds like this listener is searching and seeking honestly to know a path forward. And it's okay to take a few steps on the path and see if you notice even the slightest shift in your psyche, the slightest thought that, hey, this may be a path worth taking a few more steps down. Just try to notice that inner world that you have of who you are and who you want to become, and keep taking those small paths or those small steps, and eventually the right answer will come. But you can enjoy the journey way, way before the right answer comes. So try to enjoy the journey.
And that's a tough thing for so many of us, right? Enjoying the journey, especially when it's riddled with discomfort. But that's again, is the destination our goal, or is it the journey, right? Is it learning along the way and being willing to honor ourselves and have courage, recognizing that honoring ourselves is such an important part of our human existence. And when we do that and we're willing to sit in that discomfort, then that's when we get real clarity, right? So thank you. So to go over a couple of those points is just acknowledging that confusion's tough, that we will be uncomfortable, and to recognize that it's not a fun process, but to be okay with maybe some of that discomfort. Also, the idea of gathering information, it's just information gathering, and taking some of those steps. It's just gathering information, and it doesn't need to, be so heavy, right? And to recognize the difference between depression and just unease, and recognize underlying, right? Unease can have some excitement around it, but that some clinical depression is different. And where this listener may need to look for like the Lexapro or another chemical solution to help, that to recognize that's a different thing that we're dealing with there. I also love the idea of making small changes. And it requires courage. Even those small changes require courage and require trusting self. I appreciate this listener's question because it's brave. It's brave to ask this question and brave to say, I'm not okay. Something's off and I need help understanding what direction it is. And that recognizing it may be one of these three things and it may not be. But to try to take steps in the direction to see what might help them understand. I hope this episode helped this listener. I hope it gave some insights as to maybe some steps they can take, and to also recognize that this discomfort is part of our human experience, that we will be uncomfortable as we're learning and growing, and to recognize that they're not alone in this. And that there are many people that are trying to navigate some of these cloudy waters, and understanding that this is hard. The human experience is hard. There's just no question about it. So I hope this episode resonated, and hope that this listener will be able to find some peace even in some discomfort that they're experiencing. So we appreciate you being here. And until next time, you're doing the work, and we see you in that work. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.